Greetings and welcome back to the Aural Mess podcast. I'm joined this week by composer, performer, singer, songwriter, and my niece, Cal Meadows. Hi, Cal.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Loving having you on. I'm so glad you were volunteering to come on and talk to me. And we have to get this out of the way since you are my niece. We've been teasing you, or I've been teasing you forever about the whole Dead Kennedys reference. You know, they've come for your uncool niece, but I can't call
Wait,
you
Denny's
that anymore.
police. No, especially not since you turned me on to the Dead Kennedys. We'd be in deep trouble if the Suede Denim secret police were to come take me tomorrow.
Well, at least you're cool now. So, there
Oh,
you
well,
go.
I appreciate that. I finally have approval. It's taken me long enough.
You've always been cool. So
I appreciate
yeah, I thought we could talk about, since you mentioned, getting people into music and that sort of thing. I thought we could start off talking about influences, just,
Yeah.
influence in general. So, you're a musician. I know you've been working on like a little, private project to sort of get some songs out there, out of your head and into the world, which I think is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm a reformed guitar player. So,
What
um,
church does that go to? Is that Eric Clapton or is that a little less cream side?
no, it's a little less cream side. I feel like if I had to pick, it would be if I had to pick from that era and that sort of oeuvre, I would say the Church of Jimmy Page.
Jimmy, I mean, you can't go wrong with Led Zeppelin. Yeah.
Sloppy but soulful. I mean, the dude is just unreal.
The sonic world, I want to go back to that. I want to put a pin in that because the sonic
Okay.
worlds that man creates are masterful.
Oh, for sure. Oh, we can definitely talk about Zeppelin.
Oh, we're going to talk about Zeppelin, I feel
Okay.
like.
Excellent. Yeah. So influences and not only you as a musician, but just in general, your musical taste and how you growing up got to where you are. I know you and I always had music in common. Both your parents are very musical people. Your dad, I think, plays, your mom doesn't, obviously my sister, hi, if you're watching.
Oh,
Um,
she's watching.
but she was also responsible and I've said this in almost every episode so far. She's been responsible for a lot of my musical upbringing, between her and my brother. Um, me as a kid, like I listened to what they listened to, right? And back in the day before you kids and your internet, it was all radio or you had to go buy records, right? So it was a whole different world and you were a little bit more limited, I think, a lot of what you listened to. So what were some of your earliest memories of music and hearing songs that you liked and what was one of the first artists that really caught your ear and you wanted to hear more of their stuff and how did
Yeah.
that start to shape some of your musical taste?
That's a great question. I was raised on a steady diet of the 60s and 70s and 80s radio hits. My father is radio pioneer Pete Salant, and my mother started her career as a broadcaster herself and also an aficionado of all kinds of hits and beyond. So I was raised on a steady diet of the Beatles and the Beach Boys from my dad, and then, getting to know my mother's taste a little more with America, Dan for sure. Things like Arc of a Diver, Steve Winwood. She's a big fan of that song. She's turned me on to a lot of Luther recently that I've been really into.
Hmm.
So just a lot of really heavy radio hit influences. So starting off with some more open track, more like common Beatles songs, like your Hey Jude, your Blackbird, and then growing up with those around me, and then taking some time on my own to learn. When I was a young teenager and when I was a preteen, listening to things like "Long, Long, Long" is my favorite Beatles song, and that's like a really great. Like, no, you go to a party like, yeah, my favorite Beatles song is "Long, Long, Long," and they're like,
Long,
the
long what?
whole album is. You like the deep cuts from the White Album? All right, you're gonna go back to the psychiatric hospital. So I actually ended up making a mix CD for my father of my favorite Beatles songs, and he's like, "These are some really deep cuts you got there." And I think it's because I was started on that journey of learning that sonic grammar, learning what made those pop hits really successful, those chord changes that sell really well, the interesting lyrics, the form, and all of that, and then really getting into, okay, now that I have a working knowledge of this stuff, I'm really into the stuff that breaks those rules a lot, especially when an artist like the Beatles, I mean, obviously we're talking like ground floor with this, but when they can get really experimental and still have some reference to that grammar that they once had. I mean, I don't want to be here listening to Revolution 9 all the way through every time I listen to the White Album. I don't. We are all trying to avoid our nightmares in this day and age. But when you can still hear hints of this is what made these people really big, and their more B-side and more experimental work, I'm really impressed by that. So, for example, we'll take like Pet Sounds, which is, the Beach Boys' most iconic work and probably has influenced in some way or shape or other every successful indie or alternative artist in my generation, whether consciously or not is another question. But my favorite song from that is I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. Uh, because it takes so much of like that harmonic grammar of the Beach Boys that we've come to know and love, your major seventh chords that are stacked to heaven and beyond. But it's kind of like a proto emo song. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be out of place to hear like Mitski covering that. Yeah, OG sad boy music. But there's
Yeah.
still that sonic grammar, that harmony, and what makes the Beach Boys is still present in that more offbeat work. And I think that really got me. And now when I listen to music, I find myself drawn to some of the hits, and perhaps deeper hits than people, I'm going to be 29 in April, spoiler alert, would really get into. But I'm really into B-sides. I find that,
Yeah.
and growing up with the A-sides has gotten me into the B-sides more.
I am also a B-side kid, always was, because growing up playing records, especially, they were actual B-sides, right? So,
Whoa.
yeah, listening to the hit, but then being like, okay, I paid, I don't even remember what 45s cost, $1.99 maybe. I paid
$1.99.
I paid a
Like a
dollar
bag
ninety
of
nine
balls.
for this song, and there's something on the other side. So damn straight, I'm gonna get my money's worth and flip this thing
Absolutely.
over and see what it is. And some of the B sides were, I remember having a 45 of Atomic by Blondie.
Oh my God, it's
Total
such a song.
disco bop, great
Yeah.
song. But I remember on the B side was a cut called "Die Young, Stay Pretty." I don't think it was a
Diane
hit.
Stay Pretty was a B-side?
I believe it was, if I'm
That's an
remembering my
amazing
my
fact.
45. Yeah. So that, like you said, sort of got me into this, like, okay, well, what else does this artist have to offer, right? Because it's not just what I'm hearing on the radio. And you buy the album and take it home, and there might have been one hit, but there's 9 or 10 other songs to explore, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's often when you give those songs a chance. I mean, sometimes I'll be listening to a fresh album and there'll be a song that doesn't really capture my interest the first time, but when I'm in the right like headspace or in the right physical space, it hits different, to borrow a phrase. And I really enjoy that, and it's actually been very surprising to me what has been B-sides. You just saw a good example of that because I wasn't really around during the record era. A lot of people in my generation collect vinyl, but I don't have collect vinyl kind of paycheck, so or kind of space. So I prefer. I'm a Spotify nerd, trying to branch out, obviously, because Joni's not on there anymore, which is
I
strange.
know. And Neil Young's still off, right? He's still doing his
Yeah,
own
I mean,
thing,
there's for
or
principled reasons, but Joni, if you're seeing this, come back. We miss you. Come home. We miss you. But also, gosh, I had a point with that. We're talking about, oh, and also, when you read the memoirs of a lot of these musicians, they say, "Oh, my best work was buried in the albums," because the record companies really. And I'm a big Wilco person, and Jeff Tweedy talks often about how some of his best work on albums like Yankee Hotel Foxtrot are the songs that the record companies hated the most and didn't want to promote the most. So, in a lot of ways, I feel like by engaging with this less popular music, we're really getting to the heart of what the artist really wanted to convey. And as someone who's aspiring to that, that's really meaningful to me.
Oh, I agree. And I think you kind of said this, but I think a lot of these artists are pressured by their management or their record companies to write hits, right? So they're writing stuff that they really want to get out there and that really expresses what they're feeling or what they're thinking or, a concept or whatever. But it's like, yeah, I'm not hearing a hit. So they almost sometimes have to go back and write something that's commercial or popular or, whatever.
Right.
And I think especially in the 70s and the 80s, I think that was a pretty big thing. And today's world, you can record a song on your laptop and release it without a record company, so nobody can tell you what to do. Right?
You're trying to, if your goal isn't commercial success, for sure, or if
Yeah.
it's indie success. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of roots to success, and that there would have been. I mean, I like to think that, Fats Domino would have loved TikTok. But because he was
I
always improvising stuff in bars.
I never thought of that. Wow. I'm trying to picture Fats Domino on TikTok, and I've got a mental picture, so I love it.
It's vivid. You just got to go there. Or anybody, any musician who is known for doing a lot of improvising, I think would have done well on like TikTok Live, getting all these, gifts from these teenage kids. Being like,
Definitely.
do you know about Imagine if Ninja got a low taper fade? Do you know about this?
No.
Oh my gosh. There's I can't remember his name. I'm terrible. I didn't know about him before this happened, but there's this guy who went on TikTok Live with just his like auto-tune microphone and just started like improvising songs about his life and started getting like really deep into his like history with his grandfather who gave him his first guitar, and then he started crying on live so to distract himself.
Aw.
He sang some line about like the streamer, I guess he's a streamer, I'm not hip with this stuff, Ninja, and he's like, imagine if Ninja got a low taper fade, and that like became a meme, and after this guy like spent hours on live just pouring his heart out, and I'm like, that's Domino would have been really into this.
Fats Domino would absolutely have been a
Would
meme.
have crushed it.
Yes, 1,000%.
But yeah, those I think those influences really led to my love of what could, ungenerously perhaps be called dad rock now. Your Dans, your Wilcos, your 70s radio riders,
So when did you, I mean, if you remember, when did you kind of cross over from listening to your parents' music to like really discovering stuff on your own? And one of the things that we talked about leading up to this was I used to make you mixed CDs, like, years ago,
Yes.
right? Like when you were younger, because I felt the need to impress upon you some of my musical favorites
Here's some
because
good stuff to listen to.
yeah, but like when did you think like when do you think that kind of happened where you started to get away from okay, Beach Boys, Beatles, America, Steely Dan and how did you get into discovering stuff? Because again, you came up pre-Spotify also, right? So it was a
Sure, I
little bit
did.
harder to discover new music. So how did that
Yeah.
happen?
So there were a few ways. First of all, your influence cannot be understated or overstated. It was very you put some just very esoteric tracks in front of me. There was like Mayan Pilot by Splashdown. Still, I listen
Yes.
to all the time. Brand New Heavies. And also Ruby Vroom by the Soul Coughing
Oh, yes.
album that is a big favorite of yours that I will take with me forever. And I just love that album. And so that kind of stuff kind of had me thinking about what I might be looking for. So I got a lot of influence actually from Starbucks used to do this program where they put out like a free Apple music or like an iTunes
Yes.
download of the week card.
Yep.
I've done that shit. So I always downloaded those right away. And also I'd hear people talking about music at school and I'd write it down and I'd put it into iTunes and I'd try to, stock up when I had the iTunes gift cards and I would like Google around for stuff like, oh, I like this. I'm going to Google this person's name and see what else they did. And some other artists would come up. The machine learning level was like much more primitive than it is now, but it was out there in its nascency. It was doing its thing.
Yeah, I was there.
Go on YouTube and search this music. There was also, comments suggesting like, oh, if you like this, you might like this. So I definitely built a lot of that up. But as soon as there were kind of more discovery avenues, like I remember using Stumble Upon to find music back when Stumble Upon was a thing.
Hmm.
Rest in peace, Comrade Stumble Upon. Um, I remember using like YouTube Radio. Pandora was a good way to find music before Spotify's algorithm fed you breakfast. And then when Spotify's nascent algorithms started up, it helped a lot more like playlist sharing, and it was an easier way than just like, mailing your niece a compact disc.
Right.
How many people under the age of 20 now have seen a laser disc makes you wonder, what is that icon on the save button? Is what a
Right.
floppy disk is, heaven forfend. I used a lot of that technology though very early on. And I was also my friends and I would trade mixed CDs in high school. Sometimes I went to an arts high school part time, and that's how I got introduced to like the Shins and the Arctic Monkeys because I had a friend who was really hip to them. And of course, I was spreading your gospel at school. And, got some questions about like what Babylon Mystery Mother of Harlots, for example, meant. So that was some fun Google searches that were done in high school from Ruby Vroom, and we would trade jazz recommendations as well because I still am to some degree, but when I was in high school, I was a very devoted jazz musician, a jazz flute player. So we would trade like, oh, the solo on this is really cool, and I'm really inspired by this lick or this riff. And I got to know, again, there's your Fats Domino, your Cannonball Adderley, and all kinds of other amazing artists from just like talking to my friends at that school. I feel really blessed to have had that opportunity because otherwise I don't know what I might still be in Beatles, Beach Boys, America land. And so, yeah, sometimes on a hard day at work, it's just kind of like coming home to listen to those artists again. But definitely, like you said, it took I didn't have to resort to going to some grungy record store and listening to like some randos recommendations, but I also had friends at my academic high school that I went to part-time who were more like metalheads. So in high school I definitely got my Metallica, my Black Sabbath fixes, Opeth, a lot of people into
Wow.
Opeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like them. Lamb of God, mostly Black and Thrash. And then as I got into college, a lot of my friends were into like blackened death metal, and I'm like, this is a little too intense for me, but I get what you're I appreciate the musicianship for sure. Um, and I would say that undergrad and college, when again these algorithms were a little kinder and a little more well developed, was when I started to really break away and have like a really, really robust library. And even still, I'm trading music with friends. My friends and I send music to each other every day, probably multiple times a day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, same. I'm always sharing playlists or getting playlists or discovering new playlists from people that I talk to online and stuff, and kind of see what they're into.
Yeah,
A couple things that you mentioned that I wanted to sort of circle back on. So, Ruby's Room by Soul Coughing, still one of my favorite albums of all
mine
time.
too.
I finally got around to reading. M. Dowdy wrote a book.
No
Well, he's
kidding.
Mike Dowdy, I think he's going by now, but he wrote two memoirs. One was called like Life of Drugs or something with drugs. I forget the title of it. But he basically just sort of gives a little bit of it's like a little bit of an auto bio, but he talks a lot about how Soul Coughing came about and how he wrote some of the poetry to some of the songs, and of course, lots of drugs involved, as the title would
You hear those
suggest.
lyrics?
But you should definitely read it. I haven't
I will.
gotten around to the second one yet. I think he wrote like a follow up or like a sequel, so to speak. So I'm gonna get that soon and
Very
dig into
cool.
that one too because it was just mind blowing. Like,
It is.
seeing how the band came together and um, it's kind of the crazy adventures I think that they kind of had, for the few years that they were kind of the indie darlings. Um, the other thing is you mentioned like not going to grungy record stores. I had to go to grungy record stores, but I
I
had
was
this.
curious about that. Why'd you say something about how that went down?
Well, it was really a lot of the corporate stuff because, when I was younger, I worked in the mall in summertime and stuff like that.
Working
So it
at
was
the
like
mall.
Sam Goody and, that sort of vibe. So it was totally commercial music, but there was a little indie CD shop in Margate, a couple
Oh,
towns
yeah.
over from where I lived. And there was a guy from Philly who owned the store. And he was probably, I mean, we thought he was like an old guy, back in the day. He was probably my age now, like 50 or 50 something. And he just was like just this cranky old bastard. Like
Of course.
but he had the most developed ear for music and he carried a little bit of everything, but he really focused on alternative indie. We're talking this is like, I don't know, 93, 94 probably. So I think he turned me on to the Breeders' first album because I don't think I was aware of, who they were and what was going on. And then, obviously X Pixies and all that. But um, he was really famous for you'd go in, you'd ask him for a CD, like something that was a little more mainstream, and he'd be like, you don't want that crap. Here, listen to this instead. Like, and he'd hand you something and be like, look at the liner notes for a minute. Okay, give it back to me. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to play it for you. And he would like open the shrink wrap and like throw a CD on and be like, this is what you're taking home. You're here. I'm going to bag it. Just, give me $10 and you'll take it home with you today. Like, he was that kind of guy. And over time, I kind of got to know him a little bit because I used to go there all the time, and I would just spend like an hour in the store just listening to stuff and bullshitting with him about music. And I got a lot of really cool recommendations and a lot of discoveries through him. And he was actually able to order me stuff too. So like if I went someplace and I wanted this specific single that I knew how to B-side that I was interested in or something like that, he could get it for me. So that there was that part of it.
Music
Um,
dealer.
yeah, pretty much. It was like, first one's
Definitely.
free.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
and there was
I feel
something
like
else.
everyone your age has a story like that. Like, oh, my guy was named Pete, and he made me listen to Sex Pistols 45 times before he'd sell me a Clash album.
Well, my friend Amy and I mentioned her, I think, in a previous episode also, but we used to just make each other tapes of stuff. You know, we made mixtapes. We would just copy albums for each other. You know, whatever we decided that the other person needed to hear. And she was probably a big influence on me in a lot of ways because her musical taste was just way beyond her years. I mean, like we're in high school and she's listening to like Velvet Underground,
Oh,
you know, which, you know, I mean, wasn't really like a cool thing, I guess, in the late
it
80s
is
or
now.
whatever. Oh, it totally is now. You know, they're back in the limelight, I guess. But you know, if she would make a mixtape with like Velvet Underground, Tom Waits, and then she would go into like the Waitresses, and then back to like Depeche Mode, and then over to some other, you know, random ass like, you know, I think she put like Mac the Knife by Bobby Darin on a
Oh,
mixtape one
wow.
time. Just yeah, like I mean, crazy stuff, right?
Really esoteric, yeah.
And so not only did she give me the inspiration by adding specific songs and artists, but like I learned the art of making esoteric mixes from her and realizing like it doesn't matter. Like you don't have to follow a theme, you don't have to
Right.
stick to a certain kind of music. Like anything goes, right? And she used to make the best covers, and you know I used to make them for her too. But like we would
You
just
make great covers. I
chop shit
remember them
up
well.
and cut and paste. Yeah, but you didn't get to have any of my covers that were like handmade. Like all mine were digital by the time you were born because everything was on CD and it was all, you know, mixes from iTunes and stuff. But we used to literally, you know, cut stuff out of magazines and, you know, glue stick it onto the cassette sleeve and, you know, handwrite stuff with like a Sharpie. Like it was
Not
just
looking
like
at it in Canva anymore.
right, exactly.
Me going, this font is slightly different from the other one. Yeah, I mean, there was a real art to that, and I think a lot of people my age are interested in getting back to that kind of DIY ethic. Obviously, like the means are less cool now that physical media is starting to decline. But I have a lot of friends who are physical media heads, still, and would probably like die for a chance to have a CD like that. I mean, insofar as you can play a CD in a computer. Now the laptops don't even have CD drives native anymore, and I'm like, where do you put the disc in this thing?
They
On the
don't, and most cars don't even have CD players anymore. They're slowly phasing them out.
I don't know that mine does actually.
Yeah, I think our car does, but you know, I'll be damned if I'm going to put CDs in a case and bring them in the car with me, right? Like it's
Big
just
album of
that,
books,
that
your hymnal.
yeah. Oh, I used to have the one that went on the visor, you know, the little like
Oh
six
wow,
CD
yeah.
thing that clipped to the visor, and you just
I
slide them out of
remember.
the slots or whatever, so you could do it while you're driving and you know not wreck. So
Absolutely.
that was good.
Yeah.
Um,
I was thinking about Zeppelin again though.
yeah,
My mom actually turned me on to Led Zeppelin.
of course she did.
I heard All of My Love on the radio one time when I was with her, and I was like, "What is this?" And I'd already known Zeppelin from like Black Dog was really popular when I was growing up with my in my family. Granted, of course, I had no idea what it was about. I was like, "Yeah, it's just a cool song about a dog, rock on." But after that, I kind of took my own initiative, and I'm really into No Quarter by them, and I
Hmm.
think the sonic worlds that again that they're able to create on just Houses of the Holy writ large, and also Led Zeppelin 4 really influenced my writing a lot. Just that like really ambient the so in music we call it an ostinato. It's a repeated pattern that repeats throughout. So the da 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 da. I use that a lot in my compositions, and I think I was heavily influenced by that because I was like, oh, this repetitive motif is really what's the glue that's holding this like freaky song together. And like the Rain song and all of that, and even in Kashmir, I mean the iconic da-na-na, da-na-na, the really driving beat. I think I just took that really personally. Like all of my art. So
Well,
it comes from unexpected places. I mean, I think he's all of them are kind of geniuses in that regard.
yeah, I
And I
think
also
all four had a level of genius, you know, that they all sort of were equal, you know, in that
yeah, and
aspect. I mean,
John
people,
Bonham was an influence on me too as I started learning bass. So
oh yeah, big time. I mean, his playing was heavy and light at the same time. Like he was so powerful, but he had feel, and that's really hard to pull off as a drummer.
pocket is rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just play with his drum tracks when I was playing bass, and I was like, he's not even. He's influencing my bass playing so much from even back here, and I'm just the pocket they have is so. And the other band I was really into when I was growing up was Guns N' Roses.
Hey, don't discount Guns N' Roses.
I saw the Appetite for Destruction T-shirt all around my school, and I'm like, "What are they on about?" And of course, this is another band where, like, in early high school, I had no idea what they were singing about until I read Slash's autobiography, and I was like, "Suddenly, I know too much about what this is about." But their best album, in my opinion, isn't even Appetite for Destruction; it's Use Your Illusion too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they also, speaking of some fun deep cuts, and also some more songs with driving riffs that repeat throughout the whole song. So I remember, hearing his stuff, and when I found out that Slash did, I think it was Slash that did the solo on "Beat It." Uh,
No, Michael
was that
Jackson?
Van Halen?
That's Eddie
Yeah.
Van Halen, yeah.
Okay. Well, Eddie, I was going to say, and to segue into Van Halen, when I found out that it was Eddie Van Halen who did that, there was also an iconic picture of me somewhere on the internet wearing my 5150 shirt with my hair like puffed really big, because I thought that was like the new hotness when I found out about like 80s hair. I was like, I must have this, even though it's 2009 and I'm in high school. Um, I got really into. I'm definitely more of a David Lee Roth person than a Sammy Hagar
Oh,
person.
me too. You can't. I
Yeah,
mean, Sammy Hagar's version, like Van Hagar, has its merits, but
and Hagar.
Van Halen to me will always be David Lee Roth, a thousand
Yeah.
percent. But Guns N' Roses, it's funny you mentioned that because I wrote them off as another LA hair band, and again,
As
I was
well as, they got their moments of that, I think.
they do, but the funny thing was I wasn't really gonna give them a chance, I don't think. And I was friends, shockingly, in high school with this girl who was, I can't even remember her name now, but she was like a punk rock girl. She had like leather jacket with the spikes, and I think she had a partial shaved side of her head, and super cool. Wish I could remember her name now, but it's escaping me. Anyway, she one day we were talking about music in the cafeteria, and she was like, "Are you hip to Guns N' Roses?" And I'm like, "You mean like those hair metal guys?" And she's like, "No, no, 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 no." She said, "On the surface, yes, okay, but here, take the tape. I have it." She had it in her backpack. Take it home, give it a listen, make a copy if you want. Come back and tell me what you think. And I
Was
went
it
home and listened
Appetite?
to it. Yeah, it was Appetite, and they just had like a punk aesthetic
They
underneath
have a punk
the
ethos to
metal.
them.
Yeah, for sure. So I was
They
like,
do.
"Wow, cool."
Yeah, they did a lot of garage recordings back when they were the L.A. Roses and the Guns, and before they came
Yeah.
together. So I think they really took a lot of that with them. And there's a lot of like heavy distortion. In particular, Duff McKagan, their bassist, uses a lot of distortion on his bass lines, and also chorus pedals on the bass line, which like
Yeah.
you really only hear in like the upper octaves for the most part. But that those kinds of tactics feel directly taken from like a lot of the like Hammersmith UK punk scene bands, and he would use like these giant cabinets that of you never would guess that they're using the same stuff that the punks used. But it's the setup was incredibly impressive. And once Izzy Stradlin actually responded to me on Twitter, in
Really?
the 80s, and I was like, "Oh, like I'm a big GNR fan," and he's like, "Oh, like keep playing, like you're so like good job being a youth fan." So I have that saved to my computer somewhere, but that was really cool. He's their rhythm guitarist
Yeah.
in the pre Chinese democracy slash whatever fresh hell Axel has made of the band since.
I
We all know
met.
Chinese democracy is never going to come out. So
I know it's like it's a lost cause at this point.
it's a
Uh,
weird album. I don't know if you've ever listened to it. Shackler's
no,
Revenge kind of goes off though.
I have not listened to it. Maybe I should.
Maybe you should just for the lulls, but
Yeah.
there's definitely some probably not hits that I'm a big fan of, that just make really dynamic use again of sonic spaces. That's another big thing on my art is I just try to evoke places and take the listener on a journey in a space that might not be where they are right now. So just taking them into fully enveloping them, and I think that's one of one of the very few things that Chinese democracy does well, because it ain't the lyrics.
True story, by the way. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I met Izzy Stradlin.
No shit.
Yeah. I won't tell you the whole story on the pod, but I can tell you the whole thing offline.
Amazing.
But long story short is that I was working security at a Rolling Stones concert in
Oh
'89
wow.
in Atlantic City, and of course I had like backstage access the whole time. And it was the couple of nights on the Steel Wheels tour where they brought in a bunch of guest stars to Stones. So it was Izzy Stradlin and Axel were there. I didn't meet Axel. I don't think he was like hanging out in the backstage. I think he just like came on stage and then left or whatever.
That sounds about right.
But Clapton was there. I met
Oh
Clapton.
wow.
I actually escorted Keith Richards out of the venue. Like I walked next to him on the way to their security detail to go to their cars.
He
And
wasn't getting kicked out.
it was
That's
It was crazy. It was like, and I was like, I don't know how old I was. I was 18 or 19. It was nuts. It was like just unreal. And Izzy was like the coolest person. Like I was
He's so
afraid to
nice.
go say hi to Eric Clapton because I figured he'd be like, "Who the hell are you? Get away from me." And he was just cordial. He shook my hand and he was like, "Oh yeah, hey, nice to meet you." Whatever. He kind of turned around and kept doing what he was doing. But Izzy took a minute and signed an autograph. And he was like, "Oh, hey, it's so great that you love." Yeah, I was like, "I love Guns N' Roses." He's like, "Oh, that's so cool. Thank you so much." Like he was just like so genuine. It was great. It was
He's
refreshing,
a real guy. He was
Yeah.
definitely the least addled of them,
Yeah.
kind of by a long shot. So,
Did you ever hear his solo album?
oh, is this the acoustic album, Fire?
No, no. Oh, not solo, but with the Juju Hounds.
No, the Juju Hounds. No, I have to get.
Oh, you
Send
have
me
to get that album. Yeah, I'll have to
Okay,
send
I'll
you
send
that.
you his acoustic album, Fire. It's
Okay.
really good.
Yeah, definitely.
He's not much of a singer, but it's got
No.
some really cool riffage on it.
He pretty much apes Keith Richards as a singer. I feel like he's going for that raspy, sort of yeah.
It doesn't it fits everyone. It's just not, and that's okay. I barely fit Keith Richards at times. So
Yeah, and Keith's still kicking, so more power to him.
yeah, honestly. But yeah, that was
So
that was how that developed, and now I'm all over the place again. So
yeah, well, same. I mean, and we were kind of coming back around to modern times and Spotify and algorithms, and I've said this a few times in previous episodes, but it bears repeating. Um, I find Spotify to be a blessing and a curse because
for sure.
I love being able to have a song in my head and okay, I can go play that now because I don't have to go dig it out and put a CD on or go buy it in the store. I can literally just go to my phone or my computer and dial it up in like 10 seconds and it's playing and I'm happy. But on the other side of that equation, I feel like I kind of have a little bit of musical ADD. So like I'll be listening to a song and it'll remind me of another song, so I'll skip to that song and I'll put a
Mhm.
playlist on and I'm like, I don't feel like listening to this right now. So I'll skip half of the other songs on the playlist, even though I made the playlist on purpose to listen to all the songs. And it's just like it's terrible. But at the same time, it's fun because you know I'm using it for not only discovering new things but also for revisiting old things
I
because
am too.
yeah.
Things that I completely have forgotten about until like the algorithm serves them to me sometimes. Like, oh, what was it? I'm gonna excuse me for being rude. I'm gonna pull my phone out and figure out what it was that I heard once, like on the radio at a grocery store once, and now it's become like half of my personality.
I have a whole Stop and Shop playlist. Every time I go to Stop and Shop and I'm bopping around and I hear music coming over the PA system, I will whip
Is
out
it
my
like a
phone
bunch of
and put.
Sheryl Crow and stuff?
Yeah, it's what you'd expect, but they pull out some deep cuts, like some stuff that you
They
wouldn't think
do.
would be in
It's
store.
always the sun by the Stranglers.
Oh, okay.
And that goes nicely with the rest of that stuff. Like they do play some deep cuts because that's not a radio hit in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I don't know any of the Stranglers' other work, but I swear to God, I heard that once at like a big, wide, world class market in New Haven County, Connecticut, and I was like, oh man, here I am back in 2000 whatever with this song. But they do play some deep tracks in supermarkets if you care to listen to them. I think a lot of folks have their podcasts on these days
Yes.
during that. Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna add this to my playlist immediately. My liked music.
I wish they would play The Clash, Lost in the Supermarket, like at least once a day. Like it should be like required,
But then we could no longer shop happily.
Yeah.
They should do that though. But that might be a little on the nose. And I think now they're starting to integrate a lot more top 40 stuff. As if anyone follows top 40, in this 2024th year of the Common Era. I have no idea. I wouldn't know anything about what the hits are like if I didn't have some like adjacency to TikTok. So
Yeah, me too. And, having my daughter and her being 18, she just turned 18 and, her basically living on TikTok for the last few years.
yeah, my wife and my friends are all really into it.
Yeah, and it's gotten me into it. And same thing, like she finds a lot of old music on TikTok.
Like
Like
Zanzibar by Billy Joel had a moment on there.
she loves that song.
It's a great song.
It's a
That
great
Baker kind
song.
of breakdown in the middle.
Oh yeah, who's playing trumpet on that? It's actually I can't think of
We
his
can
name. It's actually a famous jazz trumpeter that
we
that
can
does
find
that
out.
that solo. Yeah,
I'll have to look that up real quick.
go ahead and Google that,
Yeah,
please.
it's a fantastic song though.
So she'll come downstairs like singing some obscure or semi-obscure thing from like the 70s or the 80s and even like 90s alternative and My wife and I are like, "Where did you hear that song?" And she's like, TikTok."
Yeah, my dad's like, "How do you know all of this music?" And I'm like, "The internet." Freddie Hubbard. It's Freddie
Freddie
Hubbard.
Hubbard, right, right.
It doesn't surprise me though. He did some other studio work for Billy Joel around then, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
really good one. And also like Hand in Pocket is got really popular on there. And what else was it? I'm smart, but I'm stupid. Oh, I should know this.
oh, Alanis Morissette.
Yeah, I mean I know it's Atlantis, but I was like trying to remember the name of this.
Um, it's called "Hand in My Pocket," right? Is that the title?
Yeah, so Hand in Pocket by Pretender got popular, and then Hand in My Pocket got popular by
Right.
Alanis Morissette. So a lot of the kids in their pocket, but not the kind of rhythm section pocket we'd like them to be getting into. And I also think that it's a really good platform for a lot of indie creators to share their work. I would never do that because, barring things like this, I hate being on camera. So I don't think that would be a platform that I would distribute on necessarily. But I do think it's a good way for young, charismatic bands and stuff to get noticed. And in a society where promoters aren't as big of a thing, and getting booked as an indie band, it seems like it's a little more difficult. I haven't been in a band since I was in college, but soon, hopefully soon.
Wow, really? Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm getting that started again.
nice. And what's driving you that way? And what are your plans? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I've been just reminiscing a lot about how much fun I had. I played in an indie band called Accidental Ghost in undergrad. Our music is on Spotify. I am singing on some of it, but I mostly play bass there, and I just miss making music with other people. I was at a point in high school and in college where I was performing with somebody pretty much every day, and I haven't gotten a chance to do that very much, be it on flute, which is my primary instrument, or bass, or anything like that. I'm really grateful that I married a classically trained soprano who also loves to sing, and we sing together and jam all the time. But I wanna get back on stage. I miss that a lot. So anybody out there in the Richmond, Virginia metropolitan area who likes all of this crowd that I've been talking about and wants to be the next boy genius, maybe with less drama, call me.
Nice. I will link Accidental Ghost on Spotify in
Oh
the
wow,
show notes.
yes.
Yeah, for sure. I love that stuff that you did. I remember I forget the name of the song. I think it was maybe the first song on the it was like an EP, right? It wasn't a full
Yeah,
album.
yeah, it was an
Yeah.
EP. My
Yeah.
friend Sam recorded it for his capstone project. Shout out Sam Krause.
Right,
Uh,
right.
where was the first track on it? I don't even know what the track listing is. Oh yeah, You and Me. That's the one. Oh, Any Other Way. That's one of the ones I wrote. So I
Okay.
wrote Any Other Way, You and Me, and I wrote the melody for What I Thought I Had. The last recording, loud and clear, on this EP is not the best recording of it. But yeah, I miss writing songs with other people because one time, my friend Sam just wrote a riff, and I'm like, give me like 15 minutes and I'll write some lyrics for that. And it ended up being You and Me, which is one of the tracks on there. I mean, it was pretty good. Definitely lyrically a product of me being 20. I have since advanced, obviously, in my craft. That I look forward to sharing that at some point. Maybe I'll come on again in the future and I'll have some wicked new EP to show you that I've done.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I've been trying to. My original idea was to write a song every 2 weeks and send it out to some friends, but I decided to make it monthly until May just to accommodate my increasingly chaotic schedule. But I've been trying to be more generative this year, and I've been trying to. One of the things that so I also am loosely following this Coursera class by Pat Pattinson, who ghost writes a lot for folk and rock artists especially, and he has this Coursera course he teaches at Juilliard, I think it is, about how to write lyrics, and I've been kind of loosely following that and some of his books, and Jeff Tweedy's book, How to Write One Song, which I cannot recommend enough. It is a fantastic book. All of Jeff Tweedy's books are wonderful, including World Within a Song, which he talks about the song worlds that a lot of his favorite songs transport him to. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
All three of his books are delightful, but I've been trying to just put some words out there, put some music out there, and try to get back in the game because I have not had skin in the game for far too long now. And it's things like the pandemic and, my
Yeah.
restlessness that have made me want to get back into that. Have you been playing at all since?
A little here and there, not as much as I'd like to. And I
Yeah.
also, at some point, need to just get a couple other old guys together and, find like a weekly jam session or something because I'm itching to play with other people. My problem is I
Yeah.
can absolutely just sit and plunk at the guitar myself, but it's just not as much fun.
It's not. It never is.
Yeah. So I just need to, and I can play bass too. So I mean, I'm not sold to playing guitar. So I feel like I just need to find a guitarist or bassist or both, and we can switch off, and a
Yeah.
drummer, and somebody who can just sing, or I can sing a few songs, just something, right? Just some sort of outlet, even if we just do bad covers, and
Ad covers
even
are
if,
fun.
yeah, oh yeah, we used to do bad covers in my old band. It was great.
Next time I come up your way, I'll have to bring. I have a five string that I'm really fond of. I'll bring her up your way.
Yeah, definitely.
But I just think that music as a communal outlet is so important. And in a world where there's this like, purported loneliness epidemic, what better way to, navigate that than to start playing more music together? Even if it's like bad art, better bad art than no art, right? I mean, like bands like Crass still put music out and people love Crass. No, I mean I like some of the deep crass cuts, but I mean if they can be hits making music that, I think Pitchfork would probably hate, then I mean Pitchfork will hate anything, but still.
Pitchfork gave Steely Dan albums like, ones and twos, so I still
That's
have
not
beef with
bullshit.
Pitchfork. Then they went back and revised them, so I think they've
They better
absolved
have.
themselves. They did,
We also went
yeah.
back and revised like Taylor Swift reviews though. So I mean the arbiters of taste that people my age would have you think. It's all
Yeah.
about the need what do you think about the needle drop? That guy.
Oh, I don't know the Needle Drop guy.
I can't remember. I'm so bad with these guys' names. But there's this one like music influencer. He's actually on Connecticut Public Radio. And he what is this guy's name? I'm so bad about this. Anthony Fantano.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, he's a music critic, and he mostly talks about like alternative and also kind of like MC era hip hop and rap.
Hmm.
And he's also harshly critical of the way that Pitchfork is, but he has more reasonable justifications, and he likes to talk a lot to his critics. So you should check his stuff out. I'm
Yeah,
surprised you
definitely.
haven't heard of him. Seems
Yeah,
like he'd be up
I
your
I
alley.
haven't, but I'll definitely have to look him up.
And definitely
I've
some of the stuff that you're into. You got me into some of the MC era hip hop stuff, like LL Cool J, and Pink Cookies in a Plastic Bag at a Christmas Stores. Uh,
got you onto that song. I don't have
that
any
was
recollection of
definitely
that.
that is definitely on one of the mixtapes you made. Perhaps for my mother, and not so much for 11-year-old me. Again,
I
not.
would hope not. Yeah, I think that was on your mom's mix, not
Oh, she used
yours.
to play that stuff for me all the time, though, and I'd be like, "This is cool. This will not alter my brain chemistry." Yeah, I know she would always play the mixes you'd make for her for me too. So I mean,
I think I
whatever.
tried in
That's fine, I
vain.
think.
I think I tried in vain to get her more into hip hop and that sort of thing, but I think I
It's
gave up
reasonable.
and just started putting more of the more radio friendly or not so hardcore MC type stuff
Yeah.
on her mixes like LL and that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
You'd be
But
surprised though. She's very open minded with like 95% of stuff. She just hates Sufjan Stevens. 'Cause she hates the lilt in his voice, I think. And also to be fair, like a lot of his I don't agree with a lot of the mixing and mastering of a lot of his newer albums, but we have like a running gag where every time I mention Sufjan she like gags. I think apart from that, she's like very open minded musically, so maybe you should show her like MC Ren and see what she thinks. Or like,
NWA.
damn it, show her X gonna give it to you.
I'm
Mom, I know
sure
you're watching this. Open Spotify.
I'm sure she's heard X Gonna Give It to You. That song was
I,
everywhere.
I mean, perhaps, but no. I do think that a lot of, and I think now that I'm an adult, she and I have been talking more about our musical tastes. I mean, like I said, I've been listening to a lot of these days. I listen to a lot of like funk and soul at work because it like helps keep me awake. And she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you should listen to Never Too Much by Luther Vandross." And I'm like, "I know a little bit of Luther, but not a lot." And that song is again like my entire personality. Not a day goes by when I'm not just like 1,000 kisses for you is never too much. And I'm like, that's how I
Nice.
mean. And I mean, I'm really into Teddy Pendergrass right now. He's like been getting me through.
Ah,
Yeah, it's just been getting me through my work days. So I have like three main playlists I play at work. I have my Funk and Soul soundtrack that I curated. I have a Bossa Nova playlist, and it's like a Spotify like easy 70s playlist, and it's got like Jim Crochet and like Gordon Lightfoot. And I know that you're more of a Carly person than a James person, but I also my mom texted me the other she's like, make you know he likes Carly more than James. And I'm like,
I am Team Carly a thousand
I'm
percent.
Team James, I'm sorry.
Listen, hey, I respect his music. It's just
Gorilla is
not.
one of the best albums of all time.
Yeah, listen, I like some of his stuff, but he just is not somebody I reach for to listen to. You know what I mean? Like if he
Yeah,
comes
no,
on
I
the
get it.
radio, I'm probably gonna switch the station. If Carly Simon comes on, I'm probably gonna listen. You know, I'm not gonna
That's
lie.
fair. Boys in the
Yeah,
Trees is a masterpiece, though,
yeah.
and Your Sylvain is like probably one of the. If you were to study the art and craft of songwriting, Your Sylvain is like definitely a song you should study. But
Oh, it's up there. So wait, that's an interesting thread we can tackle. What are some other songs that, were popular, dare I say hits, but are like lessons in songwriting? I have one, and you're
ooh,
probably gonna hate it, but I have to say it.
let me check my playlist. Okay, I'm listening. Tell me what yours is.
Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. I don't
No, but
care
it
what
is for pop songs. It so is. It's got that 451. No, you're so right. Speak your piece. I'm sorry.
I don't care what anybody says, and everybody can hate on Britney and
It's a
hate the
bop.
whole. It's not just a bop; it's a masterclass in songwriting. And I think Max, can't think of his name. I think he wrote it. The guy that did like a lot of the pop
He
hits in
did.
the '90s.
Yeah.
Just the structure of the song, and I had this revelation with the song when I was in the band in the late 90s because I had bought myself a Korg keyboard that was like a semi-professional performing, well, professional I guess, performing keyboard, and it had this very ancient MIDI interface on it,
Oh man.
and we were getting into songs that we didn't have instruments for, and we wanted to be able to do more, stuff that we could get better gigs with in bars, right? Because nobody wanted to hear like Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and
Oh, I want to
you know
hear. I want to hear that.
yeah, but the kind of places that we
Tripping on a
wanted to
hole in a deeper
play,
heart. Do a MIDI cover.
we did trip it on a whole, like,
I love that song.
organically. Great
Yeah.
song, but we had to start peppering in some disco, some clubs, like, like some dance, not club
Gloria
stuff, dance
Gaynor. Yeah.
stuff, right? That sort of thing. So we had songs that already had keyboard parts in it. I bought this fancy keyboard and I started teaching myself how to program stuff. And at the time, like, with the internet sort of being relatively young, you could just download all these pre-baked MIDI programs for like a lot of songs. And I figured out a way to download them, throw them on a floppy disk, which my keyboard had on board.
The floppy
Um,
disk comes back.
Throw the floppy disk in, and then I would have to put the MIDI file into Cakewalk, if you remember
I
Cakewalk.
do remember Keep and Sonar. Yeah, I do.
So
My dad.
I would throw the MIDI file into Cakewalk, make all the edits, right, and then assign all the instruments and look at the way things were structured, and then I'd have to download that into the keyboard, and then go through and using the actual keyboard interface, map everything, all the different tracks to the different sounds that I wanted, right? So, horn stabs, I had to pick the one that sounded the most like the record. We would do, whatever, like synth parts or, piano parts or whatever, and I have to pick the different instruments out of the banks of instruments on the keyboard. And then when I have a relatively finished product, my drummer would play along to this with a click track in his headphones, and we were able to do like Casey and the Sunshine Band
Oh
and
wow.
like all kinds of cool stuff that had like horns and keyboards and things that we couldn't play, right? So, and didn't have the personnel to do. So anyway, all this to say is, I found a website that had like a zip file of like 30 or 40 MIDI songs that was all like current popular stuff or like, pop songs. And the Britney song was in there. And I just threw it into Cakewalk to see what it looked like because I was joking with the band that we were going to cover it. And I was looking at the song structure and listening to all the different parts and how it all kind of came together. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing.
It's really there's a lot of moving parts in there. There's a vocal harmony that you don't really listen to unless you really listen for it.
Right.
And also just in terms of like what makes a really effective, catchy pop song with a hook that is really punchy and memorable. It's a bop. It works. The best thing is it stands the test of time.
It does.
It
It's
does.
evergreen, and
It
when
is.
Fountains of Wayne covers it, you just know
Mm,
it's a good song because
it is. It's true. They don't
Adam
do a
Schlesinger is one of the best songwriters of our
agreed.
generation, I
I
think.
firmly agree. And Katy Perry does a good cover of Hackensack of all people.
Yes, yes.
I'm not her biggest fan, but I do think
No,
that's a good cover. She does it in the original key, which I respect because that's not an easy key to sing in,
no.
as I recently discovered. So I have two answers,
Okay,
and
great.
I like pop music that's kind of refrain heavy. My first one is "I Saw the Light" by Todd Rundgren. Uh,
Yeah,
I think it's really effective having the chorus just kind of be 2 lines long and kind of a refrain that you come back to. The rhyme scheme is very simple, but it doesn't have to be that overly dramatic when that piano, that really punchy piano sound is really in there and really guiding you forward and it's really driving. And the repetition of the "in my eyes" part at the end, like that's just it's such a gratifying experience. The tension it builds and then just like the level of release in the repetition I think is really effective. And
yeah.
then also in terms of refrain based music, which again is what I'm like really into right now, "Ooh Child" by the Five Stair Steps.
Oh, yes.
That is one of my favorite songs. And again, it's very simple, but it's got that modulation halfway through the "someday" that part when like it changes the key. I'm being ridiculous right now,
Yes.
but I think that kind of does a similar thing to "Hit Me Baby One More Time" to help keep you engaged, where it just like it builds on the complexity as it keeps going, and I think that's what makes for really interesting songwriting. Even though the lyrics might be a little more simple, the chords might be a little more simple, but there are other things to add that delicious complexity that I think that you really latches onto.
For sure, and I agree. Like it builds into this sort of crescendo, if you will. I mean, not literally, but like it just conceptual
Power
crescendo.
wise.
Yeah, exactly. And then it just hits that release when you get to the chorus or the middle eight or whatever part of the
Yeah.
song. So that's just the key to giving me chills when I'm listening.
It's
Um,
just perfect
yeah,
in my
yeah, and those are good examples. Steely Dan song that you think is the best in terms of not just liking, but in terms of
Turn That
songwriting
Heartbeat
and
Over Again.
really,
Well, okay,
huh?
so that's the one comes to mind first. That and Midnight Cruiser is my favorite Steely Dan songs.
Yes.
I'd plug that one. But I really like again the refrain again. I like that it's just
Oh,
like this
Michael.
whack
Oh,
cat.
Jesus. Yeah.
Oh Michael. Oh Jesus. I love the way they say that too. But in terms of actual artistry and songwriting, it's got to be Midnight Cruiser. The fact that it opens with like almost not a condemnation, but like an invitation, like Thelonious, my old friend, like, and he's referring like out to the ether because Thelonious Monk had been long dead by the time this was being written. And just the wistful feeling that it's able to capture. It's like nostalgia for a place and time you've never felt before. And I was taking this song really personally before I even knew what like loss was. It's like a strong emotion, and I was like, oh, I just feel this like visceral grief from this song that like
Yeah.
I just feel like that you can take that on, and that's one of the things that Dan does really well is to evoke all these amazing emotions and stories that like you take that and make that a part of yourself. And I think that Dan does that in a way that not a lot of other groups are able to do. Um, but I do think that "Turn That Heartbeat Over Again" is surprisingly good songwriting for being such an unpopular kind of like not as cool song from that album.
There are so many deep Dan cuts that just hit a certain way for me that people, not the hits or not the popular
Yeah.
choices, I guess, but one of the more popular ones, and I think my personal favorite in terms of how the song is crafted and how things build is Gaucho.
Mm, I
Just
love Gaucho.
it just that
Yeah.
soaring chorus when everything kind of kicks in and takes off, and
It's that
um,
sonic world I keep talking about. It's
yes,
transportive in the same way that like a lot of things on Asia are the same way. Like even Peg, which is just a simple like linear songwriting story, you get wrapped up in like the da na 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 like that ostinato just it just takes you. And Gaucho does the same thing. It's just you forget about your life for a few minutes while Gaucho is on, and that's the kind of music I'm trying to write. As soon as someone will get me a brass band, damn it, and a brass band grant.
we'll take you to the Custard Dome.
Finally, Spirit drop me off. Do a number there.
So, do we miss anything? Is there anything else you wanted to cover? Because I think, we're getting close to
Yeah,
our time together, but
I'm sure
yeah.
I'll be on again sometime, and I'll have plenty more Zeppelin stuff.
You absolutely will, and we will definitely have to dig deeper into Zeppelin. But Cal, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
You
Thanks for
didn't
having
really
me.
have a choice, but
I know. I kind of did. Kind of did.
but
What was I going to do? Say no? Like,
I'm glad you're a willing participant, so
oh, always. Of
I
course.
appreciate it. Yes,
My
but
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
absolutely, and lovely as always talking music with you, and
Yes.
yeah,
Likewise.
definitely have to have you back soon.
Would love to. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Auf Wiedersehen.